Silas Jensen didn't think twice. He dropped the rusted wrench, vaulted over the car hood, and ran straight into the street just as the little boy darted into traffic. Tires screeched. Horns blared. Silas scooped the kid up with both arms and rolled onto the sidewalk just a split second before a black SUV zoomed past, missing them by inches. The boy burst into tears against his chest, his tiny arms clutching Silas's grease-stained shirt. Silas held him tight, heart pounding. Hey, you're okay," Silas breathed, crouching to check the boy's scraped palms. "You're safe now. What were you doing running out like that?" "Mommy was gone," the boy wailed, tears streaking his cheeks. Silas looked up and froze. Running toward them in 4-inch heels, sunglasses askew, was none other than Zariah Summers. Zariah freaking Summers. The biggest actress in Hollywood, Golden Globe winner, star of 3 box office hits in the last 2 years, and she was charging straight at him. "Riley," she gasped, falling to her knees and wrapping the boy in her arms. "Oh my God, baby, are you okay?" "I'm sorry," Riley sobbed into her shoulder. "I wanted to find you, you were gone." Zariah kissed his forehead over and over, then looked up at Silas with wide eyes, her chest heaving. She blinked. "You saved him." Silas stood, brushing off his jeans. His shirt was half untucked, his hands covered in oil. He looked like exactly what he was, a broke single dad who fixed cars behind a local diner to make ends meet. "Yeah," he said, a little breathless. "He ran out. I just grabbed him." Zariah stood slowly, the weight of who she was settling in. Even in panic, she looked like a goddess, long dark waves, perfect skin, eyes that didn't belong in real life. She took off her sunglasses. Silas felt the punch of recognition again. She looked even better in person. And absolutely nothing like someone who should be talking to a guy like him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice shaking. "If you hadn't been there, he could have." "You don't have to thank me," Silas said quickly. "He's okay, that's what matters." Riley peeked out from behind her leg. "He saved me, Mommy." Zariah's eyes welled. Can I do something? Anything, what's your name?" Silas Jensen." He scratched the back of his neck. "I was just working on a car." Her gaze flicked to the beat-up pickup truck with its hood open and tools scattered on the ground. "You're a mechanic." "Sort of. Fix up old cars mostly for cash. It's not exactly a business." He hesitated. "I've got a daughter. She's 7. This helps me keep the lights on." Zariah looked at him like she was seeing something else now, something deeper. "Do you live around here?" she asked. "A few blocks over. Why?" "I want to thank you properly," she said, shifting Riley into her arms. "Dinner, my treat, you and your daughter." Silas blinked. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said firmly. "Please." He hesitated again, but Riley tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, can he come?" Zariah's eyes softened. "Yes, baby, he saved you, of course he can." Silas chuckled. "Well, if you're really offering, my daughter's name is Rosie. She'd probably faint if she met you." Zariah smiled. "Then let's make it happen." She handed him a small white card, just her initials, ZS, and a number. "Call me, tonight. I'll send a car." She turned, heels clicking, and walked away with Riley on her hip. Silas stared at the card, still not believing any of it. That night, he stood outside a restaurant so fancy he'd only ever seen it on TV. Rosie held his hand, wide-eyed, in her best dress, one she'd worn for a school recital last winter. "Are you sure this is the place?" she whispered. The gold doors opened before he could answer. A man in a suit greeted them by name and led them inside. Zariah was already at the private back table, dressed in something simple but elegant, her smile lighting up when she saw them. "You must be Rosie," she said warmly. Rosie's jaw dropped. You're really her. Zariah laughed. I'm really me. She knelt down and handed Rosie a small velvet box. This is for you. Rosie opened it and gasped. It was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm. Mommy picked it, Riley said proudly beside her. Silas felt completely out of place, but also not. Zariah looked at him like she wasn't just being polite, like she really wanted to know him. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Zariah asked about Rosie's school, about the cars Silas fixed, about how he ended up raising her alone. He told her the truth his ex left when Rosie was 2. No calls, no support, just gone. He'd done what he could. Some months were brutal, but they were okay. I admire you, Zariah said softly as Riley and Rosie played behind them with the crayons the waiter brought. You've built a life for her, on your own. That's incredible. Silas looked down at his hands. Doesn't feel incredible most days, feels like I'm barely treading water. She stared at him for a beat. You deserve more than barely. Their eyes locked. And something shifted. When they left, she walked them to the car herself. The city lights shimmered behind her, the breeze lifting her hair. He turned to thank her again, but she stopped him. I meant what I said, she murmured, about deserving more. Silas swallowed. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you remind me what real good looks like, she said, and because haven't felt this drawn to someone in a long time. He stared at her stunned. And for the first time in years, something inside him stirred. Hope. Real, dangerous hope. And maybe, just maybe, the start of something bigger than either of them expected. When the invitation arrived 2 days later, Silas nearly dropped his coffee. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a call. It was a cream-colored envelope delivered by courier, addressed in elegant lettering to Mr. Silas Jensen and Miss Rosie Jensen. Inside was an invitation, thick cardstock, gold trim, to a charity gala hosted by the Children's Arts Foundation. Zariah's name was listed at the bottom as the honorary chair. He read the line again, formal attire required. Rosie leaned over the kitchen counter, peanut butter on her cheek. What's that? Silas rubbed the back of his neck. It's a party, a fancy one. Are we going? I don't think we have anything fancy to wear, baby. She tilted her head. Can't you just fix something like you fix cars? He laughed under his breath. If only it worked like that. An hour later, his phone rang. He recognized the voice immediately. I hope you received the invitation. Zariah sounded relaxed, but there was a deliberate softness in her tone, like she was trying not to scare him off. I did, Silas said. It's beautiful, but I don't exactly have a tux hanging in my closet. I figured. There was a pause. If it's all right with you, I'd like to help. Zariah. I'm not offering charity, Silas. I'm offering a chance for you to enjoy a night where you don't have to think about bills or oil stains. He hesitated, and Rosie. There's a children's room at the venue. Supervised, secure, full of games and activities. She'll be safe. I already reserved her spot. He looked across the room. Rosie was humming to herself, drawing flowers on the back of an envelope. You really planned all this? I did. Silas exhaled slowly. All right. Later that day, a black car pulled up in front of the apartment. A tailor stepped out with garment bags, followed by a woman carrying a case full of shoes and accessories for Rosie. Rosie's eyes nearly popped out of her head. Are we royalty now? Silas gave a low whistle as the tailor unzipped the bag to reveal a midnight blue suit, tailored down to the cuff, the fabric smooth as water under his hand. Zariah thought this would suit your build, the tailor said. She has a good eye. Rosie's outfit was a pale lilac tulle dress with satin ribbon detailing, and a pair of silver ballet flats she twirled in for half an hour straight. By the time the car dropped them at the venue, Silas was already sweating under the collar. He didn't belong in a ballroom. He belonged under a hood with a socket wrench. But then he saw her. Zariah stood at the top of the marble staircase, her gown a deep shade of crimson, fitted through the bodice and flowing like flame behind her. Her hair was swept into soft waves, and diamonds glittered at her ears, not flashy, just impossibly elegant. She descended the stairs slowly, her gaze fixed on him. He couldn't speak. "You clean up well," she said once she reached him. "I feel like a fraud." "You look like a man who belongs in every room he walks into." Rosie tugged at her hand. "You look like a princess." Zariah smiled. "You're not the first person who said that tonight, shall we?" The ballroom was already buzzing. Lights sparkled across the ceiling like stars, and a string quartet played something soft and sweeping. Waiters passed trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres that looked like art projects. Zariah introduced him to people producers, philanthropists, a woman who ran her own fragrance line, but she never left his side for more than a second. Every time he started to feel like he was drowning in a sea of perfect teeth and designer labels, she touched his wrist or leaned in with a private comment that grounded him again. "You're the only real thing in this room," she whispered once as a man in a velvet blazer bragged about his latest property acquisition. Over dinner, a man at their table asked how they'd met. Zariah paused, then simply said, "He saved my son's life." The man looked at Silas with new respect. "Ah," he said, "a real hero." Silas shifted. "It wasn't heroic. I just reacted." Zariah turned toward him. "That's what makes it heroic." After the speeches and the auction, the ballroom slowly transformed into a dance floor. Zariah turned to him, her eyes gleaming. "Dance with me." Silas glanced around. "I don't know how to waltz." "Then we'll make up our own." She reached for his hand, and he let her pull him to the floor. The music slowed. He rested one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. She fit against him like she'd always been meant to be there. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. When the song faded, she didn't step back. Her hand slid up to his collar, her fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. "You know what the craziest part is?" she murmured. "What?" "I wasn't looking for anyone. I didn't think I even wanted to find someone. But you showed up with oil on your hands and that steady look in your eyes, and now, I don't know how I got through a day without seeing your face." He couldn't think. His mind was a blur of light and her scent and the delicate pressure of her hand on his chest. "Zariah." "It's okay if you're not ready to say anything back," she said quickly. "I just needed to say it." He stared at her, heart racing. "I don't have the kind of life you're used to." "I don't want a life I'm used to. I want one that's real, that's grounded, one where someone shows up for me not because it looks good on camera, but because they care." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. But he leaned in close enough to feel her breath catch. And he whispered, "Then maybe we're both more ready than we think." Neither of them noticed the cameras flashing quietly from the corner of the room. But by morning, their photo would be everywhere. The headlines exploded before either of them had time to brace for it. Actress Zariah Summers spotted with mystery man at Gala. Who is the blue-collar hero who stole Hollywood's sweetheart? From Grease to glamour, the stranger who saved her son. By the time Silas opened his front door the next morning, 2 photographers were standing across the street pretending to inspect a streetlight. One had a zoom lens the length of his forearm. The other wore sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. Rosie peeked out from behind his leg. "Why are they staring at us?" Silas shut the door gently. They're not staring, they're just looking. She blinked up at him. That's what staring means. He leaned against the door, rubbing the back of his neck. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He didn't answer. By noon, the diner he worked behind had 3 reporters loitering near the dumpster. The manager, Sal, pulled him aside. "You're good with cars, Jensen, but I can't have this circus out here every day." Silas nodded. "I get it. I'll figure something out." That night, he stood on Zariah's terrace overlooking the hills. She'd invited him for dinner, just the 2 of them. Riley was with her assistant, and Rosie was fast asleep on a guest bed upstairs, her arms curled around a plush owl Zariah had given her. Zariah poured wine into crystal glasses, with a calm he didn't quite understand. "You don't seem surprised by any of this," he said finally. "I'm not." She handed him a glass. "My life's been under a microscope since I was 17. I'm not used to being followed when I take out the trash." She laughed softly. "Give it a week, they'll move on to the next scandal." He studied her. "Are we a scandal?" Her eyes didn't flinch. "Not to me." He took a sip of wine, letting the warmth settle his nerves. "I lost my job today." Her expression shifted. "Because of the press?" "They didn't say it like that, but yes." She set her glass down. "I'm so sorry, Silas." He shook his head. "Don't be. I'm not angry. I don't want Rosie thinking we're part of some tabloid game." Zariah stepped closer. "You're not. What happened between us? It's not about headlines. It's not for public consumption." He looked out at the hills, lights twinkling in the distance. "So what is it?" She didn't hesitate. "It's the first time in years I've felt like I could breathe." He turned, brows drawn. "You have everything. A mansion, staff, private chefs you could breathe whenever you wanted." "I have comfort, not freedom. I can't go to the grocery store without a team. I can't mess up. I can't trust people, until you." The silence between them held weight. Silas set his glass down beside hers. "I'm not rich. I don't own a suit. I didn't finish college. I can fix a carburetor blindfolded, but I've never been on a plane." She stepped close enough that he could see the faint freckles just beneath her collarbone. "I've been with people who could buy entire countries. None of them ever looked at me like you do." He met her gaze. "How do I look at you?" "Like you see all the parts, try to hide." He barely breathed. "That's supposed to scare me." "I don't know," she whispered. "Does it?" He didn't answer. He kissed her. It wasn't tentative, it was hungry, aching, full of questions neither of them could name. She pressed into him like she'd been waiting for it since the moment he caught Riley in his arms. When they pulled apart, her hands were on his chest, and his forehead rested against hers. "I've never kissed someone like that," she said softly. He met her eyes. "Neither have I." Later, as he tucked Rosie into bed, she blinked up at him sleepily. "Are we going to live here now?" He smiled. "No, baby, we're visiting." She yawned. "It's nice here." "It is." He turned off the lamp and sat beside her, brushing a curl from her cheek. As her breathing slowed, he stared out the window into the darkness. He wanted to believe this was something real, but he'd lived long enough to know that real things didn't always last. The next morning, Zariah was waiting on the patio with 2 mugs of coffee and an unread newspaper folded beside her. "Rosie's still sleeping," she said. "Riley's watching cartoons in the den." Silas sat beside her. The coffee was perfect, but he barely tasted it. "I've been thinking," she said. "You're good with your hands, you understand engines. What if I invested in something for you? Your own garage, maybe." He stiffened. "You want to give me money?" "No, I want to partner with you. I know people, real estate agents, branding consultants, could help with the startup." His jaw tensed. I don't want to be another name on your payroll." Her voice stayed even. "You wouldn't be, you'd be the owner. I'd just be the friend who helped you get the keys." He set the mug down harder than he meant to. "Zariah, I don't want to be your project." She flinched. "Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know what this is. One day I'm fixing a truck behind a diner, the next I'm in a tuxedo surrounded by billionaires." She inhaled slowly. "I didn't fall for what you do. I fell for who you are." He stood. "I need to think." "Silas, I just need a second." He left without waiting for her to follow. Outside, the air was sharp, the sky cloudless. He walked until the mansion was out of sight, until the noise of money and marble and manicured hedges faded behind him. He didn't know who he was in her world. And he didn't know if he could survive the version of himself that tried to fit into it. But even as he walked away, a truth clung to him like stubborn smoke. He already missed her. And he wasn't sure he'd know how to stop. The clatter of metal echoed through the garage, followed by a hiss of steam. Silas barely noticed. He was elbow-deep in the engine of a '67 Mustang, the kind of work that usually cleared his head. But today, nothing would settle. The shop wasn't his, not yet. But the owner, a friend of Sal's, had offered him temporary hours while the media whirlwind settled. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped keep Rosie in sneakers that fit and cereal in the cabinet. Everything else, especially the ache in his chest, he kept buried beneath grease and grit. When the door creaked open behind him, he thought it was the parts supplier. He didn't turn around. "Give me a sec," he called. "Just need to torque this down." "You said you needed time." He froze at the sound of her voice. "Zariah." He wiped his hands on a rag slowly, then turned. She stood in the doorway, dressed simply in jeans and a faded navy sweater, her hair pulled into a braid that made her look impossibly young. "I didn't expect you here," he said. "I figured that." She stepped in, her boots crunching on old bolts. "I went to your place. Your neighbor said you were working here for the week." He nodded slightly. "Yeah, just until I figure out the next move." She looked around. "It's quiet here." "That's the point." Zariah walked carefully between tool benches, stopping a few feet in front of him. "I didn't come to push you, or to offer anything." Silas folded his arms. "Then why are you here?" "Because, can't stop thinking about that night on the terrace, or the way you looked when you said you didn't want to be someone's project." He kept his face still, but she continued. "You were right. I did try to fix it with money. It's what people expect from me. Throw cash at a problem, move on, but you're not a problem. You're the first person who's ever told me no without flinching." He exhaled slowly. "It wasn't about pride. I just didn't know where I stood with you." "I didn't know either, until you left." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I found this the morning after you walked out. Riley had drawn it, said it was for you." Silas took it from her. Inside was a crayon drawing of the four of them, him, Rosie, Zariah, and Riley standing under a crooked sun with "family" scribbled in shaky letters across the top. His throat tightened. "I didn't ask him to draw that," she said. "He did it on his own." He looked up at her. He sees something I'm still trying to believe is possible. Zariah stepped closer. "You think I haven't been scared too? You think I don't lie awake wondering if I'm making a mistake?" He shook his head. "Not like I do." "You're wrong," her voice cracked. "You think because I've got money, I've got control, but I've never been more out of control than since the moment you saved Riley. I can't script this. I can't stage it. All I can do is feel it." He stared down at the drawing again. "I've been fixing things my whole life," he said. "Engines break, I open them up, figure out what's wrong, but this, I don't know how to fix this." Maybe it doesn't need fixing, she said gently. Maybe it just needs choosing. He looked at her for a long moment. And what if I choose this and the world chews it up? What if I can't protect Rosie from the spotlight? I can't promise it'll be easy, she said, but I can promise I won't let her be swallowed by it. I've already spoken to someone, a privacy lawyer. There are ways to shield kids from the press. We can do this on our terms. Oui. If you'll have me. He didn't move at first. Then he reached out and took her hand. It was warm, steady, just like the first time he caught Riley in his arms. I don't want to feel like I'm stepping into someone else's world, he said. I want to build one with you. She nodded, eyes shimmering. Then let's build it. They stood in the middle of the dusty garage, surrounded by the scent of oil and steel and possibility, and it felt more real than any ballroom ever could. 3 months later, the grand opening of Jensen Motors was packed. Rosie wore a navy dress with silver stars and passed out flyers with Riley, who insisted he was the assistant manager. The ribbon was cut by Silas himself, with a grin that hadn't left his face all morning. Zariah stood beside him, not in heels or diamonds, but in a white blouse and jeans, her hand in his. Her latest film premiere had been the week before she hadn't attended. Instead, she was here, where it mattered. Every detail of the shop reflected them. A kid's corner in the waiting room with books and beanbags. A break room stocked with Rosie's favorite cereal. The logo was stitched onto the uniforms, a sleek J inside a gear. Reporters had shown up, but not one photo of the kids had been taken. The privacy agreement Zariah arranged had teeth. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Silas locked the front door and turned off the shop lights. Zariah waited beside Rosie's booster seat, arms folded, watching him with that same look she'd worn the day they met. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He looked around the shop, his shop, and then back at her. "That I wouldn't trade this for all the red carpets in the world." She smiled. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." He kissed her then, right there in the parking lot under a string of leftover grand opening lights. And this time, it wasn't hesitant or cautious. It was home. Zariah adjusted the strap of her overnight bag as she stepped into the modest 2-bedroom apartment above Jensen Motors. The scent of fresh paint hung in the air, mingled with the faintest trace of lavender cleaner. Rosie's laughter echoed from down the hallway, quickly followed by Riley's excited voice as he pointed out the secret hideout behind the linen closet. "They've been at it for hours," Silas said, stepping into the kitchen, 2 mugs in his hands. "Rosie swears they're going to start a detective agency." Zariah took the offered mug, the warmth grounding her. "If they solve a case before breakfast, I'm going to be concerned." He leaned against the counter beside her, eyes soft. "You didn't have to stay the night." "I know. You've been on movie sets with trailers bigger than this apartment. I've also been surrounded by people who couldn't remember my middle name after working with me for 6 months. Here, at least, the detective agency knows mine." He smiled, but it faded into something quieter. "You sure about this, Zariah?" "I haven't been uncertain since the day I knocked on that garage door." Silas set his mug down. "They're already talking about you again. The tabloids, the late-night shows. They're calling me the mechanic who stole Hollywood's heart." She lifted a brow. "You didn't steal it. I gave it to you." He looked down at the floor. "I just don't want to be the reason you lose anything." "You're not." Her voice was steady. "I walked away from a lot of things, Silas, not because I had to, because they were hollow. I was tired of pretending that red carpets meant fulfillment." He met her eyes again, slower this time. "And now?" "Now, I wake up to the sound of Riley arguing whether ghosts can eat cereal, and I hear your voice humming while you prime an engine downstairs. I don't want more than that. I just want it to last." Rosie came racing into the room with a crumpled paper crown on her head. "We need a flashlight and tape. It's urgent." Zariah crouched down. "What happened?" "We found a clue under the stairs," Rosie whispered. "But it's too dark, and Riley says it might be a treasure map." Silas handed her a flashlight from the drawer. "Be gentle. That map might be over 100 years old." Rosie gasped and disappeared down the hall with the flashlight like she'd just been handed the keys to a kingdom. Zariah straightened slowly. "That right there, that's the exact life I want." He reached for her hand. "Then let's build it right." The next week, they stood in front of a modest white building with green shutters and a faded-for-lease sign dangling from the railing. It had once been a bakery. Now, it would be something else entirely. "A community space?" Silas asked, eyeing the cracked sidewalk. Zariah nodded. "Not just for kids, for families. Weekend art classes, book swaps, parenting workshops. It's not about cameras or press releases. It's about giving people somewhere to breathe." He looked at the peeling paint and broken windows. "You really want to do this here?" "I want to do it with you, here. Wherever we start, it'll grow." They signed the lease that day. Rosie and Riley painted the first mural inside, a swirl of stars, trees, and what might have been a dog with wings. No one corrected them. On a rainy afternoon in late spring, Silas surprised her with a key. It wasn't to the garage or the workshop. It was to a house. A small one, perched on the edge of town, with a wraparound porch and a yard big enough for kids to run wild. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs, one with a window seat Rosie immediately claimed. Riley wanted the room with the slanted ceiling because it felt like a pirate ship. Zariah stood in the kitchen, her fingers brushing the edge of the counter, stunned. "I thought we were just looking," she said, turning to him. "I bought it last week," he said slowly. "I wanted to ask you first, but also wanted you to know I was serious. About you, about us, about making this permanent." She stepped toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you asking me to move in?" "I'm asking you to marry me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring that wasn't flashy, but it was hers. A delicate gold band with a single emerald the color of the sweater she'd worn the first time she came to the garage. Her breath caught. "You didn't go to a showroom?" "No, I went to a woman named Edith who's been setting stones by hand since the 60s. She said this one was stubborn and brilliant. I told her that was perfect." Zariah let out a laugh that turned into a sob as she nodded, pressing her forehead to his. "Yes," she whispered, "yes to all of it." They married in the backyard 3 months later. No cameras, no press, just laughter, wildflowers, and vows whispered under a canopy of fairy lights. Riley walked her down the aisle with serious concentration, clutching her hand like he was guiding her into a new world. Rosie tossed petals with dramatic flair, wearing a crown she'd made herself. Silas wore a dark gray shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and watched her like she was the only thing that had ever made sense. When they kissed, it wasn't a spectacle. It was a promise. Later, as twilight bathed the porch in amber hues, Zariah leaned into Silas's shoulder, their hands laced between them. "You know," she murmured, "I used to think love had to be complicated, dramatic, messy." He kissed her temple, and now, I think love is knowing the exact way someone takes their coffee and still bringing it to them even when they're in a mood. He laughed. "So you're saying I'm moody?" "I'm saying I'll love you through it." Rosie curled up beside them with a picture book, and Riley followed with a blanket, throwing it over all of them like a tent. The porch light flickered on, casting a soft glow over their makeshift fortress. Inside, the cattle whistled. Outside, the world spun on. But here, in this little haven built from second chances, Love didn't need rescuing or chasing. It had already arrived. And it wasn't going anywhere.